Let me ask you this. Like, I think this might be a good way to segue into some of those artists that are important to you and what you're looking at, thinking about. I think, you like, okay, in that conversation of representation, your work is decidedly representational, right?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. Yep.
You're not Mark Rothkoing,
Right.
in too many moments in your artwork.
Yeah.
And when you're sketching, that kind of resonates as a process step, like these kind of quicker terracottas.
Right.
They resonate as like the incipient moments of what later
Right.
would become this more refined
Right.
thing. But that said, I feel like, having known your work for a long time and having known you for a long time, your artwork is more. I find it to be more conversant with contemporary complicated art thinking, meaning like art thinking that is a broad spectrum, isn't like genre based. And and your artwork has like a number of, let's say, bold triggers and then subtle triggers, or bold insinuations or illusions, and then subtle illusions. And I think the boldest ones can bring us to a place where we're like, all right, Brian's like like a representational figurative sculptor.
Right.
That's it. And the subtle ones are, could you, I think maybe, I don't know what you would think about this terminology, but it's almost like you risk, they're so subtle in your artwork that you risk people missing it. So so I'm wondering, like, I kind of want to frame this conversation a little bit around, like, let's say an artist statement, like do you find that prefacing or not prefacing your artwork with like a statement or an understanding helps people, or do you not want to do that, or how do you dance around that idea that people could look at your work quick with like not enough scrutiny or not enough time if they just glance at it as they're scrolling through, or if they're in a gallery and they're like, that's a nice sculpture, and miss some of the subtlety, which is so subtle, or some of the narrative clues, which are sometimes even hidden like behind a back or something like that. So if they don't walk around, they won't see it.
They're not going to see it.
So I think the play there is really interesting, because I like those ideas too, where you're asking and inviting the viewer, like, hey, you better come hang out and spend time and decode this. But you risk them not, right? And having your reputation or your process fall into another category.
Get pushed to the other side. This is. I'm really glad you bring this up, just because this actually has been one of my personal struggles with what I do. Because I do feel like the subtleties are too subtle sometimes. They're not subtle to me because I'm the one that does them.
Yeah, you made them. They're there.
Because I made them. But I've had plenty of moments where I've had people say something, standing and talk to me about it, and they'll say something about a work, but they never walk around it or they get closer to see something else that's going on.
And if you're talking to a person like me, I'm like the most likely person in the world to pick up on your subtleties. You know what I mean? Like me and a certain group of people are just geared to look for that stuff. So the average person is not, right? Like they're not programmed in that way. They didn't go to art school, for instance.
That's right. Or if they did go to art school, they weren't trained in the language of the language that I'm using, the syntax that I'm employing, right? So the syntax that I'm employing can look. It's like anything else. If you're not a wine connoisseur, if you've never had wine in your life, you're gonna be like, Barolo,
it's all the
same.
same.
It's like all the same. It's like like what's the big deal about wine? This shit's all the same. It's kind of like that. Yeah. And by the way, I would say this is true for people who go to a school where they learn, the only thing they learn is representational techniques, right? Some sort of atelier system. They go and they look at abstract expressionist paintings. They're like, oh, they all look the same. They don't all look the same. They don't all look the same. You have to spend time with them. You have to spend time. And you may not. And you have to. I think this is really important. I think people need to accept the fact that there may be things they don't fully understand.
Right.
That's totally okay. Like you can look at something for years and still try to figure and not totally understand it. Right. On a variety of levels or in a variety of facets as well, different sides of it. But So anyway, I'm glad you bring this up, because this is one of my big struggles is, am I being too subtle sometimes?
Yeah.
Or sometimes am I just like giving up on the subtlety and just saying, okay, forget it. Just like show the thing. And there's a range in my work that way. I mean, you have to sort of go through everything to see that, but I do struggle with that. And so to your question, I do feel that the statement is kind of important. I do think it's somewhat important for me to frame it so that people can see it a certain way. Now, obviously, one of the issues of being an artist is that you lose control over the meaning of things over time. You do.
Yeah.
Meanings change. Change,
yeah.
And it's natural for them to change.
Yeah, and they should change.
They should change. They should change. Context changes. Culture changes. People change.
So intentionality is just one context by which your art might be viewed, right? Yeah.
That's right. And so my intentionality, I think that's true for most artists. I think it's rather important to try to define it in as concise and clear terms as possible for the viewing public. Particularly, it's mostly for people who are unfamiliar. I don't think you would need to read the statement you might get something out of it that you hadn't thought, but you would need to read it in order to understand the syntax,
right?
Of the thing. But for people who don't have that, it's helpful. And so I think it's another reason why I, not just statements, but I like doing podcasts and talking with people and whatever magazine, article, whatever. It gives me an opportunity to say something that might cause somebody to say, "Oh, I didn't see that the first time, and so maybe let's have a second look at it." And so, for me, that's a very important aspect of what I do. I try not to spend too much time on the writing of it, but I spend a hell of a lot of time thinking about it.
Right? Yeah.